Previously, we looked at this sheet of rules for logarithms, and I mentioned that this first line here, I call this the 0th rule. Really, it's a definition, and it tells us that the logarithmic form log with a base b of the number m is equal to x. And remember, when I see logarithm, I think of exponents, so that x would be an exponent when we convert to exponential form. So there's the x as an exponent, there's the base b, and the number m. So these forms are definitions, and we can switch from one form to the other. And we also have a list of 7 other rules that we can use, and hopefully you have these already written down in your notes. There's 7 rules here, and we're going to use them to do some problems. So I'm going to start with some numeric examples using the properties of logarithms. So if we start with this one, if a log with a base b of the number 6 equals 1.6309, we want to evaluate log with a base 3 of the number 54. And the first thing I do is I look at this 54 and I think about 54 and whether or not there are any factors of 6 in 54. And it happens to be that 6 times 9 is 54. And 9 itself is 3 squared. So there's a relationship between a factor in 54 and that base of 3. So what I can do is I can use the properties that I mentioned before, which I'm going to use rule number 1, that a log with a base b of the number m times n is going to equal the log with a base b of the number m plus the log with a base b of the number n. So I will convert log base 3 of the number 54 is going to equal log with a base 3 of 6 times 9, and I can rewrite that as log with a base 3 of 6, so that I'll be able to substitute here. And I'm going to add it to log the base 3 of the number 9. So I'll substitute in for this value 1.6309. And I'm going to work out the second half of this in a little bit more detail. If I have log base 3 of 3 squared. And you might look at this and immediately recognize that this is going to turn into the number 2. Let me put this in parentheses here. But if I work it out in detail, if I use my rules, so I'll use next rule number 3, where I can take log of a base b of the number m to the x power. I can take that x power and bring it out front as a multiplier. So I'll make that substitution here. So I'll have 1.6309. I haven't changed that yet. I'm going to add it. I'm going to take this 2 and stick it out front here. So I'm going to have 2 times log base 3 of the number 3. And if you notice here, these match. And that also matches rule number 6 on our sheet, that when the base of a log and the number match, I can replace that with the number 1, as long as b is not equal to 0. So I'll make that substitution here. This equals 1, so I have 1.6309 plus 2 times 1, which is just 2. So my answer is going to be 3.6309.